coconut pancakes from Sri Lanka, street food with UNESCO recognition, and a chicken dish that may or may not be a national dish. This week, we're in Singapore.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. Glad to have you. Destination Eat Drink is the place where foodies come to travel and travelers come to eat. And this week, we're in Southeast Asia and the amazing food of Singapore. But first, if you love food and travel, the Destination Eat Drink Foodie Travel Guides are now available as ebooks. I've got 24 ebooks for cities all over Portugal and Spain, including Lisbon, Porto, Seville, San Sebastian, and lots of other lesser-known but equally delicious cities. Get yours at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink/extras. PS is the brains behind Everyday Tour Company. They take hungry visitors all over Singapore to get all the best dishes and drinks. And PS also has a foraging tour and several other ways to learn about this fascinating place up close. Get in touch with PS at everydaytourcompany.com. PS and I talk about Singapore as a crossroads country where Chinese, Indian, and Malaysian cuisine all influence local gastronomy. She tells me about Roti Parata, a dish called the Singapore salad, plus the street art in a famously clean Singapore. Okay, I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
PS from Everyday Tour Company. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. Today we're going to talk about food and drink in Singapore. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Brent. It was so nice to, so nice to speak to you. And food is just really one of my, it is my biggest passion. So super excited to talk to you today.
Me too. Okay. So let's talk about Singapore. But first of all, just give us an idea. Where is Singapore? It's, I don't know a ton about it. I do know it's more of a city-state. But tell me a little bit about it for people who aren't familiar with Singapore. What can you say to us?
Sure. So Singapore is located within Southeast Asia. So really very much. I always like to put it, if you know where Thailand is, you go down south, you get Malaysia, and you just go all the way south, right on the equator. There's this island, country, city, all in one. That's Singapore. In terms of a geographical size, we're talking about approximately 51 kilometers by 25 kilometers. And in terms of in miles, that would be about 31 miles east to west, 17 miles north to south. So that's Singapore for you. Not the biggest place, but so diverse. So it's an incredible city.
In the United States, I lived in Rhode Island for many years, and that's the smallest state in the United States. And from your description, it's about the same size. So for folks who are thinking about what the size is, maybe about the size of Rhode Island or maybe about the size of Chicago and the suburbs or something like that. You guys at Everyday Tour Company, you do the thing that I'm really fascinated with in Singapore is the street food and the so-called hawker trail. And you guys do a tour based on the hawker trail and the street food. What is the main takeaway when you have visitors come and visit? What is their thing that they say, oh, I'm so surprised with that, or I love that so much?
So, and before I go into that, maybe it would be really nice to talk about how the street food came to be.
Yes.
Really very much. When we talk about street food in Singapore, it's a very, very special. It's a really super special thing in Singapore. So special that it's actually inscribed on the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. So really very much street food in Singapore is when we talk about street food, it is really about a collation of different types of food coming together. So Singapore, like the United States, is a cultural melting pot. We have three big communities in Singapore. There'll be the Chinese, the Malays, and the Indians. And the street food culture It's really defined by a what we call a hawker center. It was a think of it like a local market, and within this local market, you have all these different stalls, all selling you very very delicious, very very accessible food, and they're just so amazing. So to your question about what makes it so special, what people find most fascinating, is the fact that not just this whole community dining hall, like I like to put it, but also the fact that all these individual stalls, all of these are mom and pop stalls. The most of this, most if not a vast majority of it, they are really very much passed down through the generations, their family businesses, and they specialize in one thing. So they specialize in one or two dishes. They're really what I call the true artisans in Singapore, and then they just perfect the recipe. So you have it's not just about food, but it's just eating, 50 years of goodness, 40, 50 years of goodness in one dish. So I think that is just so incredible.
I love the places that just do one thing because they're going to do it really, really well. Otherwise, they're going to go out of business. So, when you specialize in one thing, when you go down to the Hawker Trail, when you go down
Mhm.
to see these stalls, what is your one or two favorite things that you really, really love? P.S.
Right. So many things I love, and trying to narrow it down to some top few favorites. I think one of it, I mean, I think very importantly, it kind of relates to what I just talked about. The whole fact that when you have when we do this hawker trails, it is of course clearly is about the food. But other than that, we always like to share the stories, the people behind the food, like how they why do they a bit of a backstory, why do they do this? We tell the story of the city through the people, and I think that's just so immensely fascinating because it is about sharing. It is about sharing all these artisans, I like to always call them, and just tell their stories, their struggles, and how did this food come to be. And that is something that I think is very very important in the work that we do doing street food tours. So that'll be the first thing. And I guess the second thing is also that like I think that is super important, is that the fact that um this street food, like what I mentioned, it is their house within a market, a hawker center. We call it hawker centers, and I'm happy to share why we call it hawker centers, because that's a question we get asked a lot. But also because of the fact that if you think about it, it's a bit like Singapore within the market, because you see uh people of all the different ethnicities coming together. You have what I just shared with you, the Chinese, the Malays. You find in the Indian food within the market, you find vegan, you find vegetarian, you find halal food, you find gluten-free food, and it's just a market for everybody. So I think it's very, very inclusive. It's a place where it's not just where people come and eat, but it's also a place where people socialize. So you think about it, it's a bit of like an unofficial living room in Singapore. So that's how, that's what I think is so interesting about this street food culture in Singapore.
I do want to talk about this multiculturalism and specifically, the Malaysians and the Chinese and what their influence is. But I'm wondering,
Yeah.
is there, because one thing that's fascinating when you live in these crossroad places is that dishes will and ingredients will come from a different place to the
Yes.
new place, but then they change a little bit to kind of reflect the local culture and the local ingredients that are available. Can you think of any dishes like that that have come to Singapore, maybe from India or China or Malaysia or wherever, and
Mm-hmm.
changed over time to kind of reflect the local tastes and the local culture?
Oh, for sure, for sure. So, and that's I know so many dishes come to mind. But I would like to talk about this very South Indian breakfast dish. It's called the string hoppers or appams. You find them very, very common breakfast food in South India and Sri Lanka. And if you were to go there and have, this breakfast dish, okay, but maybe I'll talk about this. It is this breakfast dish it is actually, think of it like a coconut pancake. So it's made from fermented rice, coconut milk, and they made it into a pancake like shape. And they traditionally will serve it with stew, curries, etc. So that'll be how it'll be eaten in India, South India. But then coming to Singapore, then we have a very local spin on it. So the Singapore version is that we'll have it not as a savory dish that I just shared, but then we'll have it in a we'll have it as a sweet. It's a think of it like a sweet coconut pancake. So we'll eat it with some coconut milk and some sugar. So it's a local sugar. Then when you eat it, it's just wow, mind blowing. So that is one example. And yeah, there's so many other examples, but I think this is a very, very good example of how what you just talked about, Brent, when things come through here, they evolve due to the availability of ingredients available to people's that not adapt to people's taste buds, etc.
We're talking about food from India that's come to Singapore. What are some other Indian dishes that we might find, whether it's on the Hawker Trail or whether it's somewhere else in Singapore, that you think are
Mhm.
especially interesting?
So we also have this another dish that I'd like to also share with you. It is very, very uniquely Singapore. It's called the Roti Prata. It is a very traditional Singapore breakfast dish. In fact, if you were to Google like top 5 Singaporean breakfast, this dish will definitely come up. And actually, this is something that holds so many personal connections to me because I can say that half my half my body is filled by roti prata. So yes. And this dish has its origins also in South India because when you think about it, the early migration patterns of the Indians in Singapore came from the South. So a lot of our food early on, a lot of the Indian food in Singapore were a bit more Southern Indian. So this roti prata is very unique to Singapore. It's something that you don't want. I mean, you will find a similar version in South India. Again, very similar story. The uh, because of the South Indian migration to this part of the world, they brought with them their food, and one of it was the paratha. So what happened was that they evolved based on the ingredients that was available. How they cooked it was also adapted, and today we have this dish called roti prata. I'll just round it up by talking about another dish. It's called the rojak. Okay, rojak is a dish that you'll find in Singapore only. It it doesn't even exist in India. So, and this is a very, very interesting dish because if the name itself, rojak, the word rojak, Rojak, actually means mix. It is a Malay word called mix. And I always like to refer to this as the Singapore salad. In fact, if you were to go on Instagram, we actually, did a short reel about it to talk about this dish. And this is a dish that is again started by it was invented, if you could say, by the Indians in Singapore. But they took ingredients from from the different ethnic communities, the Chinese, the Malays, the Europeans, etc., and made it a very, very uniquely Singaporean dish.
As I was researching about Singapore, knowing that I would be talking to you, PS, I saw this. Speaking of Chinese food, I saw this chicken rice dish, And some
Yeah.
folks said that it's considered the national dish of Singapore. I don't know whether you agree with that or not, but could you talk about the chicken rice dish that's so popular in Singapore?
Yes, of course. So yes, so this chicken rice is yes, it's a definite crowd favorite. It is one of those like must try dishes in Singapore. When you come to Singapore, national dish. Well, very I'll say that it is definitely ranks very highly. It's personally I do think yes, it's a national dish. And maybe I can just share with you about the this chicken rice. It is this Singapore chicken rice is very unique to the city as well. Again, we are talking about the migration patterns of the Southern Chinese. So this is actually this group of Southern Chinese. They are known as the Hainanese. They actually come from this island in southern China called the Hainan Islands. So they have a very, very similar chicken rice dish on that in Hainan Island. So they brought it down again, very similar to what we just talked about. They brought this dish down to Singapore, but then they made use of the ingredients that was available. So you have some of the herbs and spices. One of which is this thing called the pandan leaf. Pandan leaf is something that you find in a lot of Southeast Asian cuisine. And they use this pandan leaf to cook the chicken rice. And it just brings incredible flavor. So and of course they use the other ingredients, other local ingredients to make it. It's incredible. A lot of times when we do our food tours, and people go, oh, let's go have chicken rice, and people be like, oh, it's just chicken rice. What's so exciting about it? Chicken rice is something that I have when I'm sick. And when they try it, they'll be like, huh, I finally understand why everyone is so crazy with this chicken rice. So yeah, so there you go. That's just a little bit more about the Singapore chicken rice. It's a dish has its origins in southern China, but coming through here, it has you could say we brought it to a whole new level. So and today's Singapore chicken rice, it is absolute must try.
The other Chinese dish I wanted to ask you about, PS, is called kaya toast. This
Yeah.
sounded really fascinating to me. What can you
Yeah.
tell? What can you tell our listeners about kaya toast? Because it sounds delicious.
So remember when I mentioned that roti prata makes up half
Yes.
of my, it's fueled by half. The other half is kaya toast.
Okay.
So okay.
50
So now
50.
you know what my body's made up of. Okay. So yes, but kaya toast is incredible. It's one again. There's so many must try in Singapore. You better bring like 5 stomachs here. Okay. So kaya toast is it's a local jam. Okay, it's a local coconut jam. Uh, very interesting. So what happened was that you had a group of Chinese who were working for the British in Singapore. So when and what happened was that a lot of them who worked in the families, households of the British, they actually saw them having toast for breakfast, and then they really got a bit of inspiration from it, and they're like, oh, maybe we could have toast for breakfast. Because the typical breakfast in for the Chinese, as strange as it sounds maybe to you, but maybe or maybe not, but it's like rice and noodles. So they're like,
Right,
oh,
right.
let's have toast, yeah, and but there was a bit of a stumbling block because what the British or the Europeans were having with their toast is imported preserves. So a lot of them were like strawberry jam, and all this were imported, and this were really, really out of reach for the Chinese immigrants. So what they did was that they took ingredients that was available, again, come let's talk when I talk briefly about the pandan. So the pandan, and then they use other ingredients that's very, very common: coconut milk. They had eggs, they had sugar, and they made it into a bit like a custardy kind of jam, and that voila, that's kaya. So, and today that is something that you absolutely have to try when in Singapore.
Another great example of transplanted cuisine. You know, the British bring the
Yes,
toast, the Chinese
yes,
come in with coconut and all these sweet things, and the jams, and
yeah,
it's a great mashup of taste to have for breakfast. Um,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
P.S. One of the things I found really interesting is my perception of Singapore from things I've heard in the media is that it's
Mm-hmm.
a extremely clean and orderly place. And so
Mm.
I was a little surprised to find that there's a vibrant street art community going on there because you don't think of street art. You think of that as more of an underground type thing, but you guys even have a street art tour. Can you talk to the street art scene in Singapore a little bit?
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna burst a little bit of a bubble.
Okay, good.
So the
I love
street,
bubble bursting.
the bubble bursting here. I'm here to burst bubbles. Okay, so the street art that you see in Singapore, they are all legal. Okay,
Okay,
so
different kind of street art.
yeah, it's a different kind of street art. It's think of them more as murals. Rather than graffiti. Okay, so these are all legalized artwork, but that doesn't make them any lesser. They're very beautiful. A lot of them could have been commissioned works, or it could also be um by the commissioned by various organizations, either by the government, by the building owners, or it could be by the community. So there are also no other types of street art that is a bit of like a self-expression. So there are spaces where these artists could come and freely express their art. So I think that makes it that makes it really, really interesting. I mean, the street art scene has really grown. When we started our first street art tour in 2018, and I'll say that it was no within the last 10 years in Singapore that we really saw this emergence of uh street art slash murals in the cities. I think it makes this neighborhoods that we go to so much more vibrant. And it just really caught on nowadays. If you even we go to some like local suburb, you see beautiful murals, and I think that just enlivens the space.
No doubt. It makes for such a vibrant atmosphere when you're in a city and you see these beautiful murals rather than just tagging of graffiti, which is, not really very interesting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've been interested in foraging for a long time. It started with
Mm-hmm.
truffles years and years ago. And
Yeah.
in fact, I just did an episode just on foraging in Abruzzo, Italy. So I was really excited to find out that you guys do a foraging tour in
Mm.
Singapore. Can you talk a little bit about foraging? What kind of things you find, and what's your tour all about?
Yes. So, oh, this is a very interesting tour. We actually go on this tour. We actually go out of Singapore, mainland Singapore. So I'll just give you a very interesting trivia. Singapore, a lot of people think of Singapore as one big island, but actually there's more than 60 islands in
Oh,
Singapore that
wow.
makes up Singapore. Yeah, so we have all this, 60, yeah, 60-ish, okay, islands. Then of course you have the mainland Singapore, that is that big island that you know. So we go to this there's one of these offshore islands. We literally take a boat out of the mainland. Very, very easy 15-minute ferry boat, ferry ride. And then we go back in time. Okay, think of it, it is almost like stepping into Singapore 30, 40 years ago, where you still had Chinese and Malay villages, because that used to be a quarry. And it's just like it's a naturalist playground. So over there, we see a lot of local edibles because this place has been so well preserved. And really very much the whole intent is to just keep it as a very special part of the city. And that's where we have our, we actually have this guy who does this edibles tour. It's so famous. He's like been on TV, he's on a newspaper. When you talk about, foraging, he's like, his name will definitely come up. So we have him to guide you through, and identify, what are some of the local plants that you can eat. I mean, that you can pick out, and how do you use them in the local cuisine, how you could, how their medicinal properties, and even, you'll get to taste them because we are, pre-prepare some small little canopies for you to try. So it's not just about seeing the plants, I mean seeing the things that you forage, but also tasting them. I think that's just complete experience. So that is that's a little bit more of our, edibles tour. It's very special. I think it's the only one in Singapore. I mean the only only, if you can think about it, well, the only people offering a edibles slash foraging tour in the city.
You talked about you talked
Yeah.
about medicinal plants, and I'm suffering from a cold right now. I've got a
Yeah,
little head
yeah.
cold going on. Uh,
Yeah.
any plants that I can come to Singapore and get and cure this sore throat and the stuffy nose that I've got right now?
Yes, we have this one called the Indian borage. You have to go, I'll send it to you later.
Okay.
And they're supposed to be like really good for, what you just described. So definitely just all these plants, they are natural healing, they're powerhouses. And all the indigenous community have been using all this as as a a pharmacy, if you could put it. So definitely we have something for you, Brent.
Not only does it taste delicious, but it also is good for you and makes you feel better. So I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, P.S. from Everyday Tour Company, it's been delightful talking to you. I encourage folks, if they're going to go to Singapore, do the food tour, do the street food tour with you guys. It'll be eye-opening, as this conversation has been. It's been really, I think, a unique place, Singapore, and
Mhm.
folks should get out there and enjoy it. What's your website address?
Oh, so it's very, very easy. It's called www.everydaytourcompany.com. So we tell, stories about everyday Singapore. We like to show you and just help you appreciate a deeper sense of Singapore away from the usual touristic sites. So, but thank you, Brent. It was been, fabulous, so wonderful, for you to take time out, to speak with me. I really love sharing about Singapore's food culture. So please, let me know if you have any other questions, and always happy to, to speak more if you ever need anything else.
Okay, that's PS from Everyday Tour Company. Book your tour at everydaytourcompany.com. And over at my Substack, I've got more from my interview with PS, like the wet markets of Singapore. Substack members can get that and lots of other exclusive material at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we're talking with Harper and Ava from Pasta Grammar about swooning over blueberry pie, peppers and citrus from Calabria, and buying a restaurant in southern Italy. Are they nuts? Don't want to miss this story. Until then, I've got tons of foodie travel at destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a new video. This one is about a place where the center line in the street is painted red, white, and blue, where a notorious slave trader was the most powerful person in town, and why Portuguese culture is so strong in a place thousands and thousands of miles from Portugal. See that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com, or just go to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. I also just posted a story about 3 of the great pastries in Peniche, Portugal, including one that's shaped like a bobbin that you use for sewing. You can read that at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.